All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about the channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the 2024 offseason fantasy football preview for the New England Patriots. And in general, I am looking to limit my exposure to bad teams, but there's a but. There's always a but. In this case, some teams that we think are going to be bad are going to be good, and that's what we're looking for is the indications that I can take advantage of prices to go after those players on bad teams, right? And this is what we talk about from a theory standpoint from fantasy football. It's the when and the where to get aggressive with the right players, and also where to fade other players and let them be someone else's problem versus off of price. Uh, One of the main things to look at from a fantasy perspective is what I'm looking for in those potential league winning players. In this case, like we talk about quarterbacks, it's the nimbly bimbly. When it comes to running backs, it's those red zone opportunities and the design passing work, those type of things going on that we're looking for. And the New England Patriots have some guys that are a little intriguing in my mind. So first and foremost, I will break out the news and the notes. So ESPN has updated their rankings right here. So they are now updated as of Monday, June 3rd. In this case, that means that like some of the old rankings are going to start changing off of what I was using before. I'm expecting that all rankings will change during the offseason. The other thing is Justin Jefferson, 1 year, 100 or 4 year, $130 million contract with the Vikings, $35 million a year. Expect all those dominoes to start falling like Jamar Chase and whatnot. And then ESPN sources are saying Giants are expecting Darren Waller to retire. This would move Daniel Bellinger up into draftability unless Theo Johnson, the fourth round draft pick, wins the starting job, then he would jump up into draftability even in shallower leagues. And in this case, we are going to be talking about Hunter Henry because these guys would jump up just behind Hunter Henry when it comes to draftability. All right. So not going to be don't really care about what the New England Patriots did last year. They were 28th in passing yards, 26 in rushing yards, tied for last in points scored. Again, Bill Belichick, fired, left, whatever, and then they brought in Gerard Mayo. They drafted Drake Maye, expecting they can't be worse than they were last year. They were bad. They weren't the Panthers bad, but they were bad in this case. So first round draft pick Drake Maye, second round draft pick Jalen Polk, wide receiver out of Washington. I like Caden Wallace, offensive tackle out of Penn State. Fourth round draft pick, offensive guard out of Texas A&M. I like Layden Robinson. I really like Javon Baker, wide receiver out of UCF, going in the fourth. And then the other one, Jaheim Bell, tight end of Florida State, goes in the seventh. I like that pick also. Not going to talk about Joe Milton, quarterback out of Tennessee at all, because I just don't know how he's going to be fantasy relevant this year. All right. So the big thing is new offensive coordinator is going to be Alex Van Pelt. He came from the Browns. He got fired after the playoff game, it looks like, expecting that this Patriots offense is basically going to be the Browns last year. And that's where it gets really interesting when we get down to it. The other things that they did last year or they're coming in this year, they signed Antonio Gibson. They re-signed Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver. They signed KJ Osborne, wide receiver. He was from the Vikes. Re-signed Jalen Reagor. Re-signed Hunter Henry. Signed Austin Hooper, tight end. And then they re-signed their offensive lineman, Mike Onwenu, and then re-signed Tyrone Wheatley Jr., offensive tackle, and then whatever Okafor, they re-signed him, or they signed him. So with all the offensive line, the other news on this one is their former first-round draft pick, Cole Strange. He may miss like half the season. They likely are going to have an offensive line that is in the okay to good category, but it may take until the end of towards the end of the season for them to hit there with Cole Strange. The other kind of interesting stuff I was looking at is Jalen Hurd is on their retired list. I think it's on ESPN that he pops up. That's a little interesting right there. Jalen Hurd. I don't think he's going to show up to camp. I don't think he's going to be involved, but I just thought that was a little interesting thing. So let's move on to the quarterback room. So my rankings on Drake Maye, third overall pick out of North Carolina, is quarterback 14. So I will say right now, when we look at what we want from players, it's their ability to win us leagues. Drake Maye has the ability to win leagues because of the rushing upside. So him being my quarterback 14 is predicated on him starting or at least playing a large majority of the season. We'll have to look at that when we get down to it. He is my quarterback 14, quarterback 30 on Fantasy Pros, 224. On Underdog, he is going right now as quarterback 28 with an ADP of 199. Remember, that's a best ball league. And then on ESPN, he is going at quarterback 23, 199. And that's a little interesting because he's right there in the line of your Jared Goff, your Bryce Young, and your JJ McCarthy. So the other thing to get out of the way first, if Jacoby Brissett starts the season, yeah, he's got a little bit of deceptive nimbly bimbly when he wants to. He's going to be more of a game manager. He's going to be a conservative. What would bother me more from a fantasy perspective is outside of maybe like the top end guys with this offense, he would be able to theoretically have like your Jalen Polks or your Javon Baker if he starts. Hunter Henry be fantasy relevant. This would mean that the Patriots are going to be in that like not good to okay category if he starts the season. Probably not going to be fantasy relevant in and of himself. But I could also see that the Patriots are going to take the slow and steady road with Drake Maye, and that would depend on like how fantasy relevant he's going to be this year. Because if they give him the keys to the kingdom, like I don't see them like yanking him, even based off of poor play. So like the question becomes between camp and the beginning of the season, how fast he can quote unquote win the job, and that's when it's going to get interesting overall. Because again, high volume passing offense and the nimbly bimbly, and Drake Maye has got the nimbly bimbly, like the number 2 rusher in this class. So 2022, 184 rush attempts, 698 yards, 7 touchdowns. 2023, 112 rush attempts, 449 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, he checks that box. If he gets the job, he's going to probably have like enough passing or rushing yards to be able to return on that investment. The other thing, and I have this pulled up, is our good buddy Joe Flacco. If that offense that we saw at the end of last year with the Browns is what's coming over to the Colts, and they are the highest neutral passing rate offense, and there's a little bit to tell us that they're going to be that. In this case, like you would be looking at 40 pass attempts a game from Drake Maye with rushing ability. That's the long and short of it. So I no longer care about what I think of players. I've been wrong on Justin Herbert. I was wrong on Josh Allen. I was wrong on Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people were. We're just looking at those 2 boxes. Can the guy run? And what type of offenses they're going to be in to support him having the passing upside to be able to return. That's all we're looking at. So I'm looking at you, Justin Herbert, when you did a quarterback 9 overall as a rookie, when everybody thought he wasn't going to be a gigantic bust, right? That's all we're generally looking at. And in this case, with our scoring, I will tell you that if it's a high enough volume passing offense, and he's a little turnover prone, you would be looking at a ceiling of a Josh Allen ceiling. Not going to be talking about this 15 rushing touchdowns. I would probably put it closer to 5, but that would still put him in that like 330 range. And again, your scoring settings and my scoring settings may be different, but that would put him in that like sub-elite type of range if he can have this 4,300 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 18 interceptions, 500 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. That's where we'll put him at. The other guys to be looking at when we're trying to comp theoretical upside or the theoretical season for Drake Maye would be Sam Howell. And that Sam Howell roller coaster, if he gets attached to that, where he's going to have some rushing upside, he's going to win you some weeks, he's going to break your heart some weeks. But again, higher volume passing offense to go with just enough nimbly bimbly. That's what you'd be looking at, something along of like 263 and 5 touchdowns to go along with 3,900 yards and 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. They've done enough to put you in the over underline of a Sam Howell season with Drake Maye if he starts the year off. That's what I would be looking at overall. If he comes in there, I would not be expecting that you're going to be looking at Bryce Young season. Now we could talk about like how much talent Drake Maye has. That's a different thing. If you want to bet on that, hey, that's fine. That's not what I do. I'm just looking at opportunity and what we can measure, and talent is something that's like harder to measure than the king of fantasy football, which is opportunity, and then what we can observe, which is the fact that he ran in college. So that's what I'd be looking at. And then the head coach or the offensive coordinator coming over from what they did with Joe Flacco at the end of last year, where he finished in that sub-elite category. That would be my mindset behind all of this. All right, moving on to the running back room. They have Antonio Gibson on a 3-year, $11.25 million contract. That is outside of like what I would consider like low end running back or that would be like mid-range running back 2 money. It's outside of running back 1 money. Rhamondre Stevenson, he comes back. Just to give an idea on this, he's in the last year of his rookie deal. They haven't re-signed him. He's my running back 23. He's going running back 20 on Fantasy Pros, 64 overall. On ESPN, he's going down here 65 overall, running back 18. I think the 18 is a little high. And then on Underdog, he's going running back 20 with an ADP of 82. I like the 82 better, but remember, that's the best ball league in this case. And then Antonio Gibson, he is, bring this one back up. He is going, again, he's split with Rhamondre at running back 23, running back 44 overall on Fantasy Pros, 134 overall. On Underdog, he's going as running back 51 with an ADP of 160. And then on ESPN, he's going here at running back 40, 118. The way to view these two guys, this is my opinion. The two things that we want are receiving back, and both of these guys are receiving backs. The other thing that we'd be looking at is the step forward in the overall offense, going back to Drake Maye. They have to be in like a good-ish type offense in order to increase the amount of red zone opportunities. So you're looking at something along the lines of a split backfield. Antonio Gibson getting like maybe the higher volume opportunity as the goal line back and the receiving back, which is going to give him standalone value enough to return in that range of, if he's going at like 118 overall, he's going to probably return as has the possibility of returning as a low end RB2. The other thing is with Rhamondre and Antonio Gibson theoretically would be a league winner if he is able to get the backfield to himself with a Rhamondre injury. With a way that I don't necessarily think Rhamondre is going to be able to do if Antonio Gibson goes down. Still going to have some running back one upside. That's where the conversation is going to come in about owning the backfield and waiting for it to shake out between the two of them. Rhamondre going at running back 18, I don't like that. I don't. It's probably where the mid-range or the high end, his ceiling is going to be without trying to predict an injury to Antonio Gibson overall, running back 18. I would like him to go outside of running back 23 to be able to return on a running back 18 type of season overall when it comes down to these two things. But they both would theoretically have the ability to win leagues, and they both would have the theoretical ability to do two things that we want. Is that like a red zone thumper, the goal line back, and the receiving back. So that's where it gets a little interesting on this one overall. So at that point, I would be taking the guy that is going to cost me less, and that's going to be Antonio Gibson. Again, I don't care about talent. Rhamondre is a better football player, maybe. Antonio Gibson has better athletic measurables. The opportunity tells me that they're going to be in some type of timeshare, like 60-40, something along those lines with Drake Maye. The bigger thing with these two guys, now that I think about it, Antonio Gibson did have some problems with pass blocking when he was with the Redskins, and that limited his ability. And one of the things is like if Rhamondre ends up being the trustworthy type guy when it comes to this backfield, with the rookie quarterback coming in, that would be something that would potentially raise his snap share, even if it's not necessarily the design work that would be going to Gibson. All right. Wide receiver room. This is where it gets fun. Jalen Polk, he is my wide receiver 29 right now with Javon Baker as we try and figure out the wide receiver room in general. Jalen Polk, he's going wide receiver 76, 183 on Fantasy Pros. Baker's going wide receiver 81, 218 on Fantasy Pros. On ESPN, you're looking at Jalen Polk going at wide receiver 62, 176. Baker is unlisted. And then on Underdog, Polk is going wide receiver 69 with an ADP of 149. Baker's going as wide receiver 80 with an ADP of 183. Now, the other guy in all this is Kendrick Bourne. He signed a 3-year, $19.5 million contract, max of $33 million. So I'm going to guess he's going to be the number 2 or the number 3 in this offense, depending on if Javon Baker can win that job in this case. So on Underdog, and again, this is a best ball meta, wide receiver meta, he is going wide receiver 97 with an ADP of 214. On ESPN, he is going 181 with a wide receiver 67. And then on Fantasy Pros, he's going 238, wide receiver 87. I have him like undraftable. He's like wide receiver 73, something like that overall. So the two guys that can win leagues are going to be Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. Couple other guys to talk about on Fantasy Pros would be KJ Osborne, that 1 year, $4 million deal. He's 274 on Fantasy Pros. Demario Douglas is 175. I don't understand this. He's last year's 6th round draft pick. He's 175 on ESPN. He's the top rated wide receiver attached to his offense, 174, like wide receiver 60. I don't even understand why he's there. In this case, you're looking at that second round draft capital of Jalen Polk coming in this offense. I like that. This is not a conversation about how good he is. I think he's fine. The guy that I like better from a talent perspective is Javon Baker with the opportunity. There is a vacated role for that wide receiver 1, and may have more value waiting after week 1 and then snatching him up, knife fighting on waiver wire based off of snap share and that type of thing. Would be listening to see if like who the number 1 and number 2 are in this offense, who are operating in those 2 wide receiver sets, something along those lines. Kendrick Bourne, the capital that they put into him makes me think that like maybe he's the number 2 if they don't like Baker. Maybe he's the number 3. The other thing in all this is Juju's still there. I have Juju's contract pulled up. I think there is an out after June 1st, but couldn't find his contract on sports track over the cap. I don't quite read it the same way. In this case, I think they can get out from underneath the cap after June 1st. Would still owe him like $7 million, like dead cap, like 10, something along those lines. Wouldn't be surprising that they just decide to get out from underneath them this year. We've seen like bigger deals being eaten. And then it just becomes some of the other guys that are there, like Jalen Reagor, that $400,000 guarantee. Maybe he stays on the roster, that 1 year, $3 million deal. Tywan Thornton, he was a second round pick 2 years ago. Maybe he's still involved. And then there's a good old Demario Douglas, the rookie 6th round pick. The big reason why I would knock Demario Douglas is he's smaller, probably would end up being like a Z slot. And if he's not getting like vertical targets, which is not how he was utilized last year, I just don't know like how he's going to be able to win anybody in any leagues outside of like, this volume based RB3, and taking a shot that I'm going to get a league winner in Jalen Polk versus based off of draft capital, or Javon Baker based off of that vacated opportunity within the offense, probably has a better chance than even someone like Demario Douglas. Again, I don't care how good a guy is or not. I care about there is theoretically going to be a number 1 attached to an offense, and that guy's always going to have value from a fantasy perspective. It just comes down to cost. And if we're looking at the range of like that 130 round or pick 130 in redraft, throwing a dart at Jalen Polk, if that's the guy that you like to be the number 1 in the offense, or a Javon Baker is probably the way to go. Right now, you could go with the draft strategy of not drafting either one of those guys and then having them be priority pickups. I probably would be less likely to do that with Polk because a lot of people are going to say, hey, draft capital. Baker's going to be a camp hype guy to be paying attention to. All right. Last thing to talk about in all this is going to be the tight end room. Hunter Henry re-signed 3 year, $27 million. I have his salary pulled up. Low end tight end 1 money. That's what they're paying him to be in this case. I did move him up to my tight end 17. He is 18 on Fantasy Pros, 157 overall. On Underdog, he is going, I didn't even pull him up. Unfortunately, I got to do that right now. He is going, if I can hunt him down. There's Darren Waller. Hunter Henry is going tight end 19 with an ADP of 164. And then finally, on ESPN, he is going tight end 21 with an ADP of 188. So in normal size leagues or deeper leagues, yeah, he should probably be drafted. There is a road for Hunter Henry to be the number 1 in this offense, period, let alone if it takes a step forward and it's in that like okay type of range that I would be expecting with Drake Maye stepping in and theoretically how the offense is going to shake itself out. The other thing is they brought in Austin Hooper, who probably has familiarity with that Browns type of offense that Van Pelt's likely to be running. And then the only other interesting this would be a Florida State tight end, Jaheim Bell, that they brought in the 7th. Like there are certain things to like about him as that move H type of like guy. And if he comes in and they're running no one runs a lot of 2 tight end sets. It's just going to be how much he would theoretically eat into Hunter Henry in that like big slot type of role. within the offense overall. But in general, this is how I would look at winning leagues, is taking advantage of other people that are going to go like, I don't like Drake Maye and I don't like the situation. Rushing quarterback could be a higher volume passing offense if he gets the keys to the kingdom. And then the other two thing is with the vacated opportunities with these rookie wide receivers, I would be looking at pulling the trigger on one of them. It's up to you which one you like better. I like Baker better. I realize with the draft capital, he's got a little bit tougher road than Polk. And in this case, it just becomes like, who would I rather have when I'm pulling the trigger this range of the draft? Like, my last last round of the draft pick. Yeah. Xavier Leggett. There are certain things I would like about him in this range. That's why I talked about him yesterday. And some of the other guys, like maybe I would be pulling the trigger on Jerry Jeudy. I like Blake Corum in this range. Again, it just depends on like how deep your league is. If you start getting into those like 12-man league, you're going to be pushing this into like a pick 144, something along those lines, another pick later. And then these guys will definitely be coming off your board in those 12-man leagues or later as those dart throws. So anyway, that's about all I got for the Patriots. And yeah,